Hello everyone, and welcome to the second instalment of the command words in Nat 5 and higher PE. My name is Mr. Gray, and it's my job today to go through how to answer an explain question. As you can see, there are 5 different types of questions that you can face, whether it be Nat 5 level or higher PE. We call these the command words, and if you can understand what each of these means, it will give you a much better chance of picking up as many marks as you can when it comes to your assessment, whether that be portfolio or in the exam. Now, through this today, I hope to give you some generic examples, some PE related examples, and discuss the relationship between describe that Mr. Nicol done last week and explain today. By the end, you will also be given a task where you have to send this in through Microsoft Teams or via email to your teacher. So 5 types of questions might seem like a lot and seem quite daunting, but it's actually not that much. The main focus today is to give you a structure that's going to help you for your explain questions. And we'll look to give you a similar kind of structure for each and every one of those command words. Last week, Mr. Nicol went through the describe questions, and that was involving how. Now that could have been who done something, where it happened, when it was, what happened, given as much detail as you possibly can. For us today, we are starting to look at the why, and that's what explain refers to. We'll clarify the point that we're making by giving the impact and an example to make sure that you can collect each individual mark. We're going to be looking at having a structure for each type of question, and for any explain questions, we'd like for you to have in mind that you will use the pie structure. Now don't worry too much if this doesn't make complete sense. After this, I'll be going through with some examples that will hopefully make it a little bit clearer. So firstly, the P stands for point. Make a relevant point that responds to the question that's in front of you. Next up, the impact. Now, more often than not, you'll see from my examples that to begin the next sentence, I'll use this means that, which leads me on to say, because of this, something else has happened. So this is when you're showing the impact of the point that you've made. Now, to finish this off, you're going to want to give an example. So give a practical example to actually back up what you've said. Now on for some examples, hopefully to help with your understanding. I'm going to be stealing one of Mr. Nichol's examples from last week, where he started speaking about Nando's, and I wondered where he was going with it. But having a general example can often help. So I'm going to continue on with that. It also gives me an opportunity to think about the relationship between describe and explain. So to begin with, I'm going to be putting on something that is descriptive, followed by then the explanation. So let's go ahead with that. Describe the self-service method at Nando's. Now I'll let you read through this yourself, but basically this is me, as Mr. Nicol showed you last week, giving you the information on how. At no point here am I giving any information as to why, only how. If you were to give information on why when you've been asked to describe, you're wasting your time. You will get no marks for it. But what you will see as we move on to the next part is the why when we're asked to explain the self-service method at Nando's. So let's go on with it. Nando's operate a self-service method where you fill your own drinks and get your own cutlery and sauces. So this is the point that I'm making. As you'll see when this comes up further down, the yellow is colour coded for the point. The blue is colour coded for the impact, and the purple is color coded for the example. So this is done when I'm looking at the impact. This is done so that the company can save money. And to finally back that up, this is because they need less people to be serving customers and therefore they can save on wages. I now go on to my next point, leaving a gap in between. In addition to this, the self-service method is more efficient. For example, if everyone does their own little bit, rather than relying on only a few people to serve, things will move quicker. I'll leave a gap before I go into my next point. And lastly, it allows for a bit more personalisation without any hassle. So the blue being the impact there, I follow that up with the example. For example, I get to put as much or as little ice in my drink. I can also take one sauce or many sauces to see which I prefer. After having that general example from Nando's, we're now going to go for a P-related example. So the question is, describe a method you use to gather data on one factor impacting performance. Again, my focus here is to give you the relationship between describe and explain so that you can understand that there is a difference between the two. After that, we will move on and look purely at explain questions, but hopefully this will improve your understanding. So this, although a 4-mark question, is a fairly simple question. All you're having to do is give 4 descriptive points of what you did. And I decided to use the bleep test. So this is just an introduction. To gather information on my starting levels of CRE, I use the bleep test, and I go ahead and give 4 different points. I actually give 5, but since we've already picked up the marks, the maximum you can get is 4 anyway. So that's describe. Very simple, straightforward. And again, it doesn't give you any information on the why, only the how. So when we move on to the next slide, you'll see that we are asked to explain. So explain why you used a particular method. So sticking with the bleep test, yellow, colour coded for the point, I used the bleep test to record my starting levels of CRE for many reasons. Firstly, it's a standardised test. This means I can compare my score nationally and get a rating for my age and gender. I won't read everything through, I'll put them up though. I like to always leave a gap before moving on. I think it's good practice to suggest that to you for when you're going to be writing your answers. Now, the eagle-eyed amongst you will notice that this is slightly out of sync. I've said to you that we'd be using the pie example, P-I-E. Now, I'll make it pretty clear for this. The point always comes first, so the P will always be first. However, for the impact and example, those can be interchangeable. I like to try to keep it so that it's point, impact, example, but with certain questions, it's sometimes easier to do it the other way around. Hopefully, it'll still make sense to you. The last example was geared more towards a National 5 level, and it's important for me to also show you what it will look like for higher level pupils. Now, don't get too bogged down in some of the detail that are in these answers, because these are some of the things that we will be teaching you if we were actually in front of you and when we do get back to some practical sessions. So as I said, don't get worried. It's just for me to show you examples that you will actually come up against. So the question is, explain 2 reasons why a performer should collect qualitative data on mental factors. That question itself may well scare you, but do not worry. The main thing that I'm trying to show you here is the structure, not the actual content. Color coded again. Collecting qualitative data on mental factors is beneficial as it can back up any quantitative data that I've gathered. Now, some of you will be looking at that and thinking, what do those words even mean? I don't want to even go into it right now. The most important thing is the structure. So for example, when I complete my decision-making questionnaire, I leave a space at the bottom for my personal thoughts to go alongside any statistics that are gathered. This means that I can compare my statistics with my own personal feelings to confirm my findings and make them more reliable. As you will see again, it's been a little bit easier in this example to go with the point first, then the example, then the impact. You will see starting in green there, I started with for example, showing I'm about to give you an example. For the purpley pink, this means that, and you will know, as I've said earlier on, that I'm going to give some sort of impact there. So including the point, the example, and the impact, we will be able to pick up that 1 mark. I won't go through the next one, but I'll put it up just for you to read. Again, the important thing here is the structure. If you notice again, after giving my point, I'll say in the green, for example. Then in the purple, this means that, making sure that I'm giving the point, the impact, and the example. Those 3 things are crucial. The last example that I gave you and this one for explain questions are actually both just taken straight from the 2019 PE exam paper. Whilst some of the content, like I've said to you, will probably be a bit scary right now, the main thing is that we are looking at the structure. So I won't go through it in great detail. This is a 4-mark question coming up. So explain the changes that you made to your personal development plan as a result of monitoring. I will go through the first of the 4 marks that we will be looking at and then just give brief pointers for the other 3. Again, my focus will be on structure. Point, give the relevant point, then give the impact using this means that, and follow up with an example, usually starting with for example. So just to get the first of my points, I will be looking at this whole thing. Now, that's 1 mark's worth. It seems like a lot of writing. So during my personal development plan, I had to make changes as a result of information I gained through monitoring. That first bit there was just an introduction. Now I'm going to talk about the point. Firstly, through monitoring using my own personal feelings in my training diary entries, I was able to identify that I was becoming bored in my training because I was doing the same things over and over. Moving on to the impact, I then say what that meant. This meant that I was losing focus easily on what I was working on and was starting to feel like I didn't enjoy my training anymore. Due to monitoring and reflecting on my training, I put some things into practice. Moving on to the green, I give the example of what I did. Now I've filled in this example. If you'll notice up the top in yellow, underlined is my own personal feelings in my training entries. For the following examples, I have left those blank. The structure will remain the same, but you could put in different things. The content that you get over this next year will allow you to be able to fill in those blanks for yourself. And each individual person may actually choose something different, but your structure will remain the same. So here's the second example. Obviously it's shorter, I'm cutting it down just to give the structure. Moving on to points 3 and 4. So each and every time at higher level, I've had to find 4 points. I gave my point in yellow, I then give the impact that that's had, and I give the example. Doing it like this, especially as I've said to you before, leaving a gap in between, will make it very, very easy for the marker to give you 4 marks. Okay, we're eventually on to the last slide, and it's over to you. I don't expect you to have all the knowledge of the content, and therefore, rather than asking you a PE specific example, I will be asking you a generic example. It should be something that all of you are familiar with. So let's go ahead with it. Your question is to explain why subscribing to Netflix is a good idea. Now, it's worth 4 marks, so I'm expecting you to give me 4 points, followed by the impact, and followed by the example. Now, as I've mentioned before, if you get those, the impact and the example the other way around, it's absolutely fine as long as they're included and the point comes first. So, point, impact, example, and I'm going to give you a little tip for this. If you're looking for 4 points, because I actually found it quite hard myself when it was a general example, go into Google and search for reasons to subscribe to Netflix to get you started. You should find about 8 or 9 there. You need to pick 4 of those that you feel comfortable then giving the impact and examples for. Once you're done with this, you can either email it to your teacher or put it onto your Microsoft Teams group. Good luck with it. If you have any questions, please get in touch.